One Greek unmasked meeting in person. Yeah. So people I know, I have few questions. They were taking their patients to college. Yeah. What's the schedule? She gone? Only from Sunday. Like 10 days left? 10 days left. Where's she going? Columbia. Yeah. That's so exciting. She turns 18 on Saturday. And it was just Abby's birthday, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Abby's on this road to her friends in Fairbanks.
I think so. Okay. Yeah.
Driving
I'm pretty sure.
Oh my.
To land, to get to Boston in like 40 days. Oh my.
She's driving from Fairbanks to Boston? Yeah. Isn't that what you do? This is clearly somebody young. Oh my.
Yeah.
Is she with somebody or?
Yeah, her friend, I guess, from college was working there for a couple of years and was moving, so she volunteered to go up and move with her.
Wow. There must only be one way to get through the Yukon. I didn't, like, there's not a lot of ways to get from Fairbanks, like, not a lot of ways to cross the Yukon.
Instead of spreadsheet.
Yeah.
So they're all right.
I would expect nothing less.
Yeah.
Well,
So she's ready, huh?
she's been away, I have friends in Connecticut all week, so I haven't even seen her. So if she's ready, it's like, I don't see her work to jobs all summer. Where does she work? She's hostessing at Rosanna's down on Dove, and then she's working the membership desk at JCC. So she's only working, she's 2 days left of work, and then next week she's back working. So, are we on public Zoom?
We are on public Zoom.
Okay, just checking.
Sorry.
Turn my
And I think we're just waiting for Jack. So once that's, I guess while we're waiting, can I just have everybody go through and check their mics? So, yeah. Check. Closer. Pull it closer. There you go. Perfect. Yep. Perfect. Thanks.
Has anyone talked, Norman? Have you talked to Norman?
I called and wished him happy, left a message there. I think Aaron has. But I haven't talked to him. And probably we can.
You okay?
Yeah. And it's to make it to the, we're going to play for lunch next to the Albany Institute. But he has full-time assistants all day. I'm the incredible part. Just until. I remember when he had a one on Washington. Garage sale. Went to the next room, Dutch Village. So how much went to the garage sale? Nothing, we got it all. Up to February, that was a disaster.
Yeah, that didn't.
Get out of it.
Who wants to be close to all your doctors?
So we're going to this one. Sure, I think everyone's still.
Nice.
Thank you so much. It's an interesting game. What used to be the city arts office, when the Orange Ford was down there.
That's
One of the ones, it was the head of, the head going through the condo. And so she told me. Now, you know what? Makes me double. That's it. And there's a new headmaster.
Have an elevator?
An elevator, you have floor in car, you have, it has parking and doors.
I'll call the meeting to order. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Historic Resources Commission of the City of Albany. We welcome those who are tuned in virtually and those who are present here today. We have two items on the agenda. I'm John Myers, the Chair of the Commission. Also in attendance this evening, we have Commissioner Kaplan, Commissioner Garrity, Commissioner Tobin, Commissioner McEnany, and Commissioner Hacker. I declare we have a quorum, so we may conduct business and make decisions. We are also represented this evening by Martha Mahoney from the law offices and Corporation Counsel office, and Aaron Glennon from the planning office staff. We will offer an opportunity for comment from the audience, and would ask that those comments be limited to the topic at hand and limited in duration to 3 minutes, if at all possible. So with that, we can proceed to the first item on the agenda, 108 Water Street. Hassan Saleh is the owner. It's on Water Street Historic District. And it's a certificate of appropriateness for the replacement of the storefront.
Yeah,
And-
Danny Sanders, I'm here.
Thank you, Dan.
Good evening. So thank you for letting us present again tonight. There shouldn't be any issues with breaking out since last time. So basically what we did is went back to the site and simplified the design. We removed the sign at this point. That'll be taken on later. And as far as maintaining the existing storefront, we came up with a proposal to have the panels that are existing be painted one color, and then the trim a lighter color. The trim being the window frames and the trim around the windows of the apartment entrance, the recessed entrance, and then introducing a very simplified detail on the column section or the pier between the apartment's entry and the storefront. That panel design, the decorative 3 panels, match the interior alcove panels of the apartment. So as it wraps around the corner, it'll be similar in appearance to the panels that are in the existing recess. So it was discussed as far as that would be way to give a little bit more detail to that section between the existing storefront and the recessed entrance. In addition, to clarify from the last meeting, the transom has a very thin mullion between the 2 pieces of glass, and that existing transom will remain intact, no modifications other than paint at the trim and also the doors themselves. And then the glazing itself would be replaced in kind, since the glass sections are both cracked. So that's the extent of the work, and I'm getting a little feedback, so I don't know why that's happening, but either than that, I think I'm pretty much done with our explanation. We did just come in with 2 different colors, the darker bronze and the light bronze, and of course, we will finalize the color with staff.
And presumably the little wing wall to the right side of the opening will be removed, and some sort of trim element on the right jamb or the right door surround. The opening recess.
Yeah, that section will be removed. Yeah, that's just a temporary wood framing and plywood.
Yeah. I guess the only comment I would offer is that the simulated panel on the left side of the opening, if that could be narrowed so that you actually exposed a piece of the aluminum trim that, or the flat material that's there now, matching the width of the one at the other end of the storefront. That way you kind of frame and balance the storefront, and you independently frame and balance the entry to the apartments.
I guess I need to clarify. Could you clarify that? I'm sorry. I'm not sure.
Well, I'd like to point to the photograph, but you're not going to see it. So
This right here?
no, the wide aluminum panel between the storefront and the recess or the entrance to the apartment.
Yeah.
If you took the panel that is the applique of the panel to that piece, if you narrowed that to the point where it's balanced with what would happen on the right side of the entry of the apartment, and also that the exposure of the material matches the width in that center pier, that the exposure of the material matches the width at the corner end of the storefront. So that, again, the storefront is framed as a composition, and the entry to the apartment is framed as a composition.
So almost down the center to split that piece. Would you rather see that this match this than have the trim work be applied to the exterior of it? So one of the things that at the last meeting was a condition was to verify what was behind this. It is all structural, like solid wall behind this panel.
Yeah, I didn't quite follow. I think your intent, taking that big wide panel and somehow dividing it such that it would have two roles. One is to the storefront, and the other is to the apartment entry. That made a lot of sense, but I don't know that you were suggesting a single vertical.
Okay.
But,
That's,
yeah, I kind of lost. I think you're onto something, but I didn't understand where you were going.
The way I understood what John was saying is that the casing, the exterior casing trim of the entry vestibule or step in will be treated differently. Right now, Dan has it, I think, bronze cladded on all sides, top and right side. I think John was saying why don't we treat those differently, reducing that large metal panel that's to the right of the. I think that's what John was going.
Well, okay.
I agree.
If this large, wide piece that's between the storefront and the entry, if you took a portion of that, match the width of this element on the corner end of the storefront, match that width here, and then reserve this width for some sort of applique that works with the paneling, the return panel around the door, and do a similar treatment over on this side. I mean, proportionately, I think all of those elements start to work.
The drawing is a little bit inaccurate in that the shingle overhang goes all the way to the edge of the building. The drawing, it stops short when it sees the line coming down on the second floor. In other words, those shingles, if they're there, they should go all the way to the very edge. They don't, they stop because there's
Well, the corner board.
That trim was off, that's right. I apologize for that. Yep.
obviously, if you were to create, let's for the sake of argument without measuring, and let's assume that when we look at the storefront, it's got 10 inches to the left of it, vertical board, right? And I think what John is saying that it would be nice if the storefront had a similar board, also in the same size, let's say it's 10 inches, on the right-hand side, which would match it. It's a little bit off though because it doesn't match itself. Notice that the storefront is not in the middle. The door is not in the middle anyway. So it's not like you have a true center and, to the left matches the right. They're different from one another.
The other thing is we don't know the condition if we take that panel off. I understand what I understand what John's looking for, and I would agree it would look better, but until we take that aluminum panel off, we don't know the condition of what's behind it. It would be nice if it was the same width as the other panel to the left.
Well, I guess, were we talking about removing the aluminum panel or keeping the aluminum panel and applying a piece to the face of it?
Correct.
right. So that panel would remain.
Yeah.
And it would just be,
Yeah, unless we slice it. We take it off, slice it to the same width as the one on the left and put it back up, and then see what the condition is of the remaining, substructure there.
Well, Danny, I think what John is saying is that you can retain that aluminum panel, reduce the width of the proposed detailing, and provide delineation, some sort of vertical delineation between the storefront and then the entryway.
Sure.
So that detailing would all shift, reduce slightly in width, and then have a panel similar to the size at the northwest corner, correct, John? Yeah.
I think it's kind of
Yeah.
contrived, which is why we're struggling with it. And if you look at it in elevation, I mean, I understand in one photo, Erin, that you showed that had the same panel configuration on the return to the apartment entrance. So that was where these portions came from. But if you, I don't know that that's as prominent as seeing it in elevation. And in elevation,
Can I make a,
Hold on a
I kind of,
second, Dan. So in elevation, the space above that those panel doesn't really make any sense unless, you know, you can't make it out there, there's a lighting fixture or something above. So, yeah, I think, John, your original idea made sense, but it feels a little contrived here to me with the panels applied.
And I would say, Marilyn, one of my conditions when I had wrote up the staff memo for this was looking at the existing historic material and then the location of the proposed panels on this vertical board. I think everything needs to be slightly shifted up. And so that area between that top proposed panel and the siding would actually be reduced. It's just.
can I make a suggestion as far as another option? How would you feel if we took off the aluminum panel on the right side, sliced it down to the same width as the one on the left, and then maintained that as an aluminum storefront look, and then modified the surround at the entrance into the apartment with a different detail out of AZEK or out of a cementitious material of some sort? So in other words, that would have a different surround arch with relief or with a recess or something to break it up.
No, I think that works.
Yeah,
I think that. I mean, should you be applying anything on top of, is that on the far right side, adjacent to the building, is that?
Because there's nothing really beautiful about the lintel there or the post look on the right side right now that couldn't be dressed up in some type of wood material that would contrast both in color and in, you know, texture with the aluminum.
It seems to me that addresses what Commissioner Myers was talking about, because that sets off the entrance to the apartment and that recess.
And I don't really have any trouble with the aluminum. It's a reasonably clean look. It's a contemporary approach to the storefront. And really what we're trying to do is just kind of reinvent the entry to the apartments and give it its own presence and give it a surround. And yeah, everything there is either T111 underneath the fabric siding or other kind of ersatz materials.
So the aluminum, if the aluminum storefront stayed unpainted, is that kind of in your mind as you make that statement?
Yeah.
So the aluminum, which I would do, so I take on a maintenance issue
Right.
long term, then you've got the opportunity to make a transition which frames
Right.
the entrance.
Yeah.
So two separate approaches.
You could build that out a little bit,
Yeah.
maybe with a cap or something. I mean, more residential, whereas everything else is sort of slick, and leave it the way it is.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, I think letting the storefront be basically what it is, just kind of adjust the proportions a little bit. Do
a surround for the entry to the apartments. And then where as Aaron Lennon has said, where the material kind of overlaps the foundation, just find a good horizontal line along the bottom edge of that inset panel under the storefront windows. And then strike that line straight across. I think we could meet out there, draw chalk, and be done with it.
Aaron, I'm at Schenectady City Hall right now in the parking lot, and I just sent you a picture of something that I'm looking at that I think is in the same vocabulary that we're talking about. I
Okay.
emailed it to you.
2 seconds. Maybe.
Yeah, that's a clear
Oops.
differentiation.
Sorry.
We saw it.
I don't know where everybody went. Where'd it go? Can you see that, Dan?
Yes, I can. Yeah.
Okay.
Same thing, different identity between the storefront and the upstairs.
Okay.
Just take it as a concept, not detail wise. I'm just
No, we're not gonna match the detail.
yeah.
But conceptually, that's what we were driving at.
Yeah. It's good. Good observation.
Is this, this is the hearing.
This is the hearing, so there needs to be an action tonight for the application.
Were there any other matters that we needed to address with this? I think the signage comes later.
The signage will come later. I had Dan remove the previous sign panel from the application because that will come at a later date, and we'll work with the applicant on that proposal. So the conditions from the previous hearing were to verify the transom, if there's anything behind the central aluminum large infill panel, to simplify the existing inset panels of the storefront, and then provide additional photos of the property. And I think one of the other conditions, Sean, that you had placed on the previous was also for when the sign does come forward to provide a section drawing of the existing storefront roof. So that will come later.
We think with something coming forward on signage, it would be something really lighting.
Hopefully, yes. So those were the conditions from the previous meeting.
I don't feel brave enough to make a motion.
Is this a situation where there's an understanding with Ann, the architect here, to make a drawing and supply it to you that satisfies the conversation we just had?
If that is a condition that you would wish to put on, I mean, you can include that in the motion as a condition of the application, so. I mean, that would be, my recommendation would be to make sure that anything for the apartment entrance is submitted before the permit is let out, so.
So I guess I'll put forward the motion. In light of our discussion here, that can we make a new rendering? The treatment of the exterior of this, and I don't need your approval. Yeah, so I don't necessarily mean this resemblance, but we have a rendering of what it may look like in his intent. That be approved.
Could I suggest including that we were going to recommend not painting the aluminum and leaving it as is part of that?
Can I amend it?
Yep.
I second it, and can I amend it so that also that the revised drawing would be shared with Aaron and with the chair?
Yep. And just,
With the understanding going forward, we're approving it based on that understanding and the receipt of the drawing that confirms what we just discussed.
yep. And Chris, can I just clarify that that Dan will provide new renderings, and those renderings will reflect the removal of the aluminum panel to be cut down to match the aluminum panel at the northwest corner, and that there will be a differentiated treatment to the apartment surround, correct? That's what you mean? Okay.
I will second the motion.
Any comments from the audience or anything that's online?
We did not have anybody signed up, but give me 1 second. Just double check. I can figure out how to stop share. Sorry. Kara is on. We don't have anybody signed up tonight, and I don't believe Kara is signed up to speak. So I think that's it. I don't think anybody's here.
Not hearing any further discussion, I just call the motion for the vote. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, the motion is carried. Danny, go forth and conquer.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll talk to you soon. Take care.
All right, bye-bye. Moving on to the agenda is 191 North Pearl Street. The apartment building that we have had several discussions, workshops, and comments on.
So this came forward earlier this summer for concept review, and then also came forward for workshop in May. They have since provided updated renderings of the proposal based on the comments from the commission at the workshop. The commission had recommended simplifying the fourth floor roofs over the balconies. They had previously been bracketed to match the other cornice style. Also to revise the proposed entryway by changing the color of the cladding and making the door and entry more prominent. So they have removed the brackets from the balcony roof coverings. They have added a side light to the entryway, and they have changed the color of the brick veneer cladding from a red brick to the blonde brick. So this is coming forward tonight for the official hearing. Ron Stein is present if there are any questions for the owner.
I don't know if I think I was at both of these workshops. Did the entrance go down to street level? Was this the one where it was elevated and there were stairs?
That was the previous one in 2020 that had come forward for concept before it had been sold to the new property owner. It had been elevated.
Okay.
So this proposal is going back to the design that was approved in 2016, which had a at-grade entrance.
Yeah.
And this goes into a small vestibule area to a switchback ADA ramp and a small set of stairs up to kind of an elevated lobby elevator area.
Yeah. I like this much better.
That works well.
Can we see the, given elevations of the,
Do-
I can't remember orientation.
Of which?
Yeah.
This one? This is Wilson Street.
On the North Pearl Street side, the color variation helps. I just wonder if the door and the 3 extra wide windows should have the impression that there's some sort of a lintel over it. I can't see if there's any difference.
So let me see if I can.
It looks
There
like
is.
the soldier course.
Yep, sorry. So there's a soldier course here. You can just kind of see it. There's one here, and then there is one, I think it's a double down here. I can't look on my computer.
Is there even the shadow of a individual lintel over each of the openings? Because I don't think.
No, it's one continuous line.
It's a big bar.
Yes.
I wonder if it would look more prominent. Remember the earlier conversation, it keeps looking like it's much better now. But it made it keep looking like the back door and the side door are less prominent. You just wonder if a lintel that looks like the ones up above, for example. Just a shadow of some sort of a vertical line on each left and right side of both the windows would give the illusion of a lintel of some sort, which would make those windows look more prominent.
Could you go to the Wilson Street again? And I'll ask John.
I'm not looking for a different color or
Yeah,
anything, just something.
My question is, would, part of our goal was to break up some of the expanse. And so, no, I'm sorry, you can go out. I wonder if a slight projection on that soldier course all the way around, there you get a lot of shadow line.
Yeah,
Is that a little bit better?
but
Actually, it looks like there's a shadow line there.
Yeah.
I would
I
hate
think
to
that
be putting
recess.
in,
Or a recess.
If I can.
I would hate to be putting in a vertical element only on street of, excuse me, a horizontal element when all of the windows up and down the street are vertical. And I just wonder if below that line and above the top of the window, if there should be a box showing some illusion of a lintel. It would mean the opening would be more important on the door than the three windows.
So how would that integrate with what I think this is showing? It seems to show slight recess above the upper soldier porch. And it appears to be a slight recess right back, one of that horizontal mullion. And then it almost looks like I don't know what, an overhang? Shadow? Can someone help us?
Yeah, is the course flush or is it protruding? There's
We don't know.
two above and one in the bottom.
Right. We don't know.
In the rendering, it appears to be protruding.
It's protruding over that bottom piece, so I think it's more of an illusion above, but it all kind of protrudes that it goes in. So, and I'm not, obviously, we've been changing this along the way. If I don't know if that will really, I know what you're saying, and, we're trying to make the entranceway prominent as well. But I don't know if you did that, would that give it too much, take away from the doors? People will be looking at that. We could have made it more subtle and across so that it looked part of the building and the doors and so on.
Yeah, when I looked at this picture, I could barely even notice the two upper soldier porches. And when you look at the other picture,
It's much more prominent.
it's more prominent.
Yeah, and I think you'll see it more prominent. It just washes out with the rendering more than it does in real life. I think this is more accurate.
So now that it's more, now that I see it as more prominent than, maybe it doesn't need the.
I don't think it will. I'm more to do it, but I think we've already did it by doing that texture and the bump out kind of feel
In color.
and color. Yep.
Yeah.
I think the simplicity of it really helps the strength of that mask.
Yep.
And it also ties together what's happening over the windows with what's happening over the door. And you wouldn't want to put a lintel over the door. It's wide with the side light. It just.
Now that I see the color differentiate, I agree, it's fine the way it is. When I saw the first one and there was no color differentiation, it seemed to need some.
Yeah.
Obviously it has.
So I'm not clear. So what I see, let's see, I see I believe it's a brick veneer and some sort of a color brick veneer, color A.
Def.
Color, no, I'm sorry, I'm coming, let me start at the top and come down, I'm trying to understand what. So we've got a cornice, which is plastic material of some sort. Yeah?
I wouldn't say plastic. It's probably more like
It's an EFS based, yeah.
With the brackets like that? Like on the plastic material, okay. So we've got a synthetic material at the top, color A, then we've got brick veneer, probably, not full brick, yeah,
actually, I think we're calling full brick on it, right? It's called.
okay. And the sills and the windows of the second and the third floor windows, what are they?
Precast is what it's called out on the plans, it's precast.
Okay, so there's our third color. And then we start to get 2 or 3 different materials and colors. I'm just trying to understand. So at the corner, at that corner, what's that material?
Architectural CMU block.
Okay, so that's a different,
And then this is a textured CMU block.
okay.
And then these are,
Wait, hold on a second, wait one. So those are 2 different, are those 2 different colors?
yes, and that was based off of the comments from the commission.
Okay. And then the sill and the lintel, and for those,
These,
and then that band course, what are those?
precast sills and lintels,
Sills, lintel, and that whole band.
correct.
Okay, so I don't know how many colors that is, but okay. Then the new entrance that we're speaking to.
Yep.
What's that material?
It's a brick. I'm guessing another full brick, correct, Ron?
Yeah, it's gonna be the same kind of, brick.
And a different color, different color based on comments from the commission.
Okay, and then the cornice, that area?
Is also an ephes.
And then I think that cornice is going to, I don't exactly, I can't see it all, but I think that cornice color is gonna match the balcony color. That ties in.
And then the cream colored brick, and then the sills on those windows.
Are precast to match these.
Okay, and then these 3 horizontal lines that we're talking about in the shoulder portions, those are projecting or recessed, or what are they?
This is recessed,
That was recessed.
recessed, projecting.
Or you can say the water table beneath is.
It's more
recessed.
recessed.
It's recessed, exactly,
That's how
yeah.
I put it, towards recessed.
Yeah.
I would say that way.
Recessed, yeah.
I wonder if it looks more like a water table to me. Should it wrap around that little corner?
Here?
Yeah.
I think it
it's going
does.
to. I think it's going to, and it
Yeah.
does, you just can't see it in the right way.
Yeah.
So it wraps,
I'm 99% sure about
it wraps here, yeah.
Yeah, if it doesn't wrap, it will. Because
It wraps here, Jack, and it wraps here, and you can just kind of see it where I am.
I'm sure.
It wraps here.
You've done a great job.
Well, so it's C2, architecture and design, give them the props. And you all, because we had a lot of months here to work on this workshop, so.
Yeah, I have one question for all, which is, now I understand it now, mostly, I don't understand the colors, but I'm trying to get the palette. What is the lowest course, as if it were a water table? Below our 3 large windows that we've been talking about. Any thoughts on that changing material to perhaps be like the rest of the stone that we see where the arrow is, and projecting it a bit as a lower foundation area to be, and I wonder if it would not soil as much as the brick would be right at the question.
I don't know if I understand, because I understood that the underneath, like that water table, that's the same material as under the brick with the 3 windows. Isn't that, Karen, can you move the arrow to the left?
Where am I going?
Down.
Here, this?
No,
Or this?
left.
This?
Yep, and down. Is that material the same as?
Here?
Yeah, is that the same as there?
No,
Yes.
No.
no. It's the brick. It's brick.
It's the brick.
This looks like it's this.
Yeah, it's the brick all the way down for the storefront.
My question
Here, yeah.
Great.
Just watch the camera on the photo.
So, oh, I see. Oh. And you're saying take this and make it here too?
That was my question. Yeah, it was just a question.
Sorry.
I couldn't see that.
I see the color scheme of the waterfront, and we'll have a little more maintenance, as you said, but I think it will take away from the symmetry of the front. But I'm open, again, to us, it doesn't really affect it, but I think the symmetry is really well set right now.
You see the elevation?
Yeah.
Hyper-focusing the door.
I actually agree. I agree because I think looking at it up close to the scale of the materials of the brick, because it gets so narrow there versus the block on the ends. And I think didn't we specifically ask for different materials on those ends?
Yes.
So I like the brick on the storefront middle section. I think keeping those materials differentiated makes sense.
What the brick also does is it allows the whole thing to function as kind of an element or a mass of the building. It's not broken up by any sort of a material change other than the cornice. I think that's what we were trying to do when we were suggesting give more prominence to that entrance.
Yeah, okay.
So I think, I looked at it and said, you know, there are a lot of different materials going on here. And I think the key is going to be to get some physical samples of the material and really, you know, select them carefully so that those colors work well together.
Yeah, I think if the colors, I like the way they work together in the rendering, so if they work together similarly in real life.
And Sarah will work
Yeah.
from C2 Design, has worked with you before, will work with you to make sure that you know, the colors match what you're looking for.
Okay, perfect.
Personally, I really like that it looks complementary to the district, but it also clearly looks like a new building.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really good thing.
And I think it has a degree of prominence as a building, as an address to the other solutions that we've seen for this haven't necessarily had.
And the Masons are very happy.
They will be very happy.
So one more question, that little, small piece popping up on the roof, since we're thinking about things that pop up on roofs lately. How high is that? How far back is it? Is there a roof plan? Where is it? There it is.
Let me see if it's in the site plan.
It's trying to be in the center, it's the stairwell.
So there's no elevator shaft.
No elevator to the roof, at the stairwell. And with the stairwell, you have to build this monstrosity above it to allow height and a hatch and all the other building code things.
Do you know how high it is, Ron?
I think the code calls for it to be, I think the height of the ceiling is supposed to be probably 10 feet. With a hatch.
And I can verify that information.
This is an old elevation, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you go back to the current rendering, just to, it seems to me that is what it needs to be, and it's, you know, in the building.
Everybody's gonna be looking at that blonde yellow brick
Yeah.
and that doorway.
I agree with you, the Hudson come up there.
It's gonna be nice. I usually be very, very nice with it.
I
A lot of
hope,
windows, a lot of bright lights.
I hope that a lot of work has gone into the design here and quality going into it. And I hope that mural that they're talking about on the left-hand side is something worthy of the block. It doesn't look like it's a kindergarten.
I didn't even heard of that girl, but okay.
That's one of the possibilities of putting something there. I would hope that it would be in keeping with that block of 19th century buildings, early 20th.
Is there roof access for the tenants?
There will be access to the from that stairwell.
So what, is there a section drawing that, so we're going to parapet or railings?
If it's built, we haven't figured that out yet because of the cost. If there's railings, I have, and that'll be controlled, and it'll be, we'll work with Aaron, of course, on all of that we have in the past as well.
So we should probably see that. The railings would be-
Well, should we see it only if it's visible from the street? Because if the railings are set back, then.
Right. Yes.
It'd be wonderful if you could have a real garden out there.
And the building, 2 buildings on Dana that we have, they're set back.
The railings are.
Yeah, there's code again.
Yeah.
So it's a good, depending on the side, almost 4 to 8 feet in. Depending on that, and then the railings are on top of that. So it's a minimal size, but you know, on those buildings we've done it. It's just right now, given the material costs, it's just, you know, it can't be done to get the building built. Given the cost of everything going out.
It's good to keep an eye on that. It goes up.
I'll make a motion to approve unless, are we ready for that?
Yeah,
Right.
we'll certainly entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve as it is. With, you know, if there's railings that are going up on the roof deck that are visible from the street, that anything be reviewed by Aaron, and that needs to be reviewed by the commission.
Okay, we have a motion, second. Discussion from the audience.
We didn't have anybody signed up. Looks like Kara is still on. Okay, give me 1 second, Kara. Let me do this. Talk. Okay, go ahead, Kara. Yes.
Awesome, thank you. Historic Albany, just want to say that we really appreciate all the effort put into changing the design. It's really come a long way, and that we're really thrilled to see this development that's happening on former parking lots. Usually we see the reverse, buildings being demolished for parking, and we're really appreciating the fact that people are taking the time to really think about these, try and design them as well as possible, and actually build buildings back on surface parking lots downtown. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well said. All right, I'll call to a vote. All those in favor of the motion? Aye. Opposed? Okay, unanimously carried, so thank you for all of your efforts.
Thank you guys, everybody. It's been fun to work with you all.
Well, get the message out.
I think if we go with an open mind, it worked really well. So I think the design is definitely, I'll say on our behalf, and again, credit to Mike Roman, Star Melu, and C2 Design Architecture, their plug again, but the building is way better looking and much nicer and better fit, having gone through the process than where we were. And I thought we were better than where we were in 2016 to even start. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
The proper process has worked.
Maybe they all work this way.
Yes.
Thanks for trying.
Thank you. I think that. Ugh, what did I do?
All that said, are there any other, well, I guess one question I have.
Yes.
Have we had any response from the Common Council or the Mayor's Office on the interim report?
I submitted the interim report on August 6th. I have not heard anything from anyone in either office. I did ask for it to be distributed, so I believe that it was most likely distributed by Danielle Gillespie, the clerk, to all the Common Council members, but there's been no feedback, so we will see.
Happy to meet with anyone who would like to discuss it.
Mhm.
We look forward to any sort of comments or improvement or what we need to do to adjust going forward to the
I will say, I'm sorry, Martha did reach out to the building department on our behalf, and we did, and I will share these. We did receive the report for 47 3rd Avenue and 15 Lexington Avenue on August 5th and August 6th. So I will distribute those to you all so that you can review them for the structural reports. The only one that we did not receive, and I believe is the 8 Delaware Street, and that is because it was a county-owned building, and so they did not provide it to the city.
So without looking back at the list of recommendations, I think 7, and 6 or 7 are maybe words for 12 inches, something like that.
Yeah.
Ones that I immediately come to mind is one you said, let's work with BRC, let's work with buildings and see if we can move forward in a positive way. And the other thing that we included was starting to prepare our own list of most critical buildings that we would want a higher level of protection for.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, one of the kind of remember the list is Kenwood. So I don't know that we need to wait for anyone to tell us to do that.
Oh, no.
Mm-hmm.
So it's certainly that one. Working with buildings, it's a little more challenging, but because it's 2 different entities. But identifying our priority buildings, our own kind of 7 stage and watch, and I think hoping that there's more sustained code compliance for those buildings in order to protect those buildings. I think that's something we should be starting to organize around.
Yeah, I would love to do that if, I don't know if Kara's still on, but I feel like that would be a great thing. Can we do that with Historic Albany, or can we seek Historic Albany's input? I feel like having that be, I don't know, collaborative or at least complementary to, I think would be really good.
Kara is still on, and I will also say, yeah, I'll unmute. I guess unmute. It is a recommendation of the preservation plan to coordinate with Historic Albany to create a list of threatened buildings or buildings to watch. Let me just pull Kara up. So Kara, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Marilyn was discussing one of the recommendations that we have put in the emergency action report was creating a list, a Historic Resource Commission list of properties, kind of like the 7 to Save list that comes out, of properties that should be, that are either threatened or that we should be watching. And one of the things that Aaron Tobin had just said was, would it be possible for us to coordinate with Historic Albany Foundation with the list that you all produce? And that is something that is a recommendation of the Historic Preservation Plan.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and our endangered list is something that we've taken a bit of a broader approach with over the last few years, looking more at bigger buildings and not some of the, I guess, smaller scale buildings that really should be watched. I feel like our oldest building survey that we did a number of years ago with support from the Preservation League is actually a really good resource to use for this, because it highlights some of the ones that I think are really at risk in our older neighborhoods, like the before 1840s, especially the wood framed buildings. So we do have a really good list of those kinds of structures that we're happy to share and work on. Obviously, this building list, yes.
Kara, is that early building survey, was that put into Chris, or is that?
Yes, to my knowledge, it was.
All right, and can that talk to Sam Wells's map?
That I don't know, because that would be lovely.
What,
Yeah, I mean, just like how the city
Oh.
has, I mean, I call it Sam's map, but, you know, the city's map of, you know, the buildings and the different codes, you know,
Yes.
all these different colors and things. But if there was a layer that had the oldest building and the ones, you know, what Marilyn's talking about in terms of what we want to look at, right?
Mhm.
I mean, I'm thinking, I don't know if it would be different colors, but somehow integrate it with the city's codes.
Well, the irony is we're looking for greater code compliance, including property maintenance for this list of buildings. So that's the integration in the context of the vacant building and the emergency demolitions is that for those buildings, they merit more regular code compliance evaluation and more regular action taken, whether it be by DRC, regular inspections, whether it be actions that go to the court or any of the other tools that we might be speaking of. But those, we're looking to stay those buildings through code compliance. So it may be some of the most fragile and smallest and the older buildings, but they're also the most significant structures that we've got. But it's, the framework will be the same, right? The buildings can change, but the framework of they're identified, they're inspected, they're regularly, I don't know the process that well, but they're inspected on whatever that is. They're inspected monthly, the owners are held responsible. Somehow our code court is part of our discussion, and we really get to protect those buildings, not to mention use some of those vacant building registry and or other funds for some of the short-term protection that Rick's talked about and we're starting to see. So it's, yeah, so I can look at the code complaints, others can work on what that list is. And I think it'll generally be the same process that we would be wanting to follow. But we're wanting to use code compliance and that staff and those efforts and procedures to save our buildings.
So I think that would be a good appendix to the report. And we do issue one in
April
April.
1st.
And we issue the next one in April for the full year to, have basically map all of the 7 save or buildings on the watch list that have a particular value. Not that all buildings don't have value, but these have been identified as vulnerable, highly prized buildings that we need to address, not allow them to fall into a state of disrepair that they become an emergency.
So for example, the new drone that the city will have the capacity to inspect buildings with, that should be one of the inspection tools rather than just standing across the street and saying you can't go in.
Right.
So
Fly over that building, let's see if they have a roof.
Right. And it's rear wall. Yeah. So I'm happy to take on that part of the puzzle with others. It's just that whole compliance path, and you'll of course have to help with that part. The others and other sites. For you all kind of figure out what this is, that this procedure and watch process will be defined.
I think working with historic Albany, looking at the list that they have, see how we can build on that, merge with it, some of the other buildings that we don't have.
I would love, I'm changing topics, but we're done. I sent Aaron and Commissioner Myers, and I forwarded it to Commissioner Kaplan, the Albany Land Bank proposal at Clinton and Lee Johnson. And I don't know if there's more details RFP information that's going out to developers, but because half of it or more is in the historic district, I am hopeful that the land bank is putting this proposal out there so that developers will rehabilitate the existing buildings that are there, including the historic ones on Henry Johnson. Even if they're outside the district, just editorializing, but the ones in the district, certainly I hope that they're coordinating. And I would sort of have expected that they would have maybe even come to HRC to make sure they know what the requirements are before. How is HRC going to be involved? Because it seems like it would be problematic if a developer proposes to demolish all of the buildings in the historic district, and then we have to deny that, and they're the land bank's chosen developer. So I want to preemptively work collaboratively with them to support this project, to bring new investment to a community, and making sure that it's done with the fact that it's a local district and then in our district,
Right.
And that they're promoting the use of the historic tax credits, because this is all qualifying. The Clinton Act certainly qualifies. So
Right.
that's a lot that I said, but I just.
Kara, are you still here?
Yep.
Yep, she's here. She's there. Yep.
Were you part of the discussions? There were active discussions on this?
No, the first I've heard about it is when I got it in my email this morning.
Oh, really? Okay. Thought you might have been where I started to see chatter.
No, that would have been nice.
I guess I'll state also that it would be great to have them include Historic Albany in any conversations with the commission, that, you know, if it's a public workshop, which that's why we have public workshops, right? So that then gives Historic Albany an opportunity to chime in.
Correct. Yep.
Can we invite the land bank to come and present to us?
Why not?
Yeah.
Other land bank?
That was one of our recommendations, was to be more involved and engaged with the land bank
Large land
and
bank.
other
Okay.
local organizations. So
Okay. Great.
call our own block.
Yeah.
Do you want specifically just for this one, or?
I think that's a good start,
It's a good start, yeah.
Okay.
because it is in a district. We would have to look at it at some point. Let's be proactive, inform how we envision those properties going forward.
Well, and be in a position to support the project. So rather than in the background saying.
It's going to be more advantageous for the land bank to have us in their court
Yes.
and rooting for them
Yes.
than to come to us in an issue where they want to now demolish a couple of buildings, because that's going to make the development proposal work better.
Yes.
Preempt that.
Yeah.
Accept that.
And I would also add, I mean, I wouldn't want to dilute that invitation. I agree should be about this project, but maybe as an aside, if they're envisioning doing things like this down the road, or if they're working on the next assemblage of parcels that include in a historic district, that maybe, you know, this continue so that for the next one, they also come to us, maybe even before it's publicly announced, to kind of make sure.
Mhm.
And maybe they can't before it's publicly announced, because this is obviously a public meeting, so, but, yeah. Hopefully working with Mr.
We set up quarterly meetings to put it on the calendar.
Let's get one first.
Yeah, I know.
And then we'll be eternally.
Well, if it works to their benefit, our benefit, then
All good.
it's a win-win. And they might look forward to that kind of partnership. We've offered many times. Well, partners with things, look to us as a resource.
Well, plus then they can say to potential developers, look, you know, we're working with the Historic Resources Commission, we can
Are there any other items?
Anything new on what's going on the old Ralph's on the corner in Scotland?
Oh. We should have talked with Ron while he was here. It has been on my list. I've been a little,
Let me add one more, that, believe it or not, is related to it. I walked down Spring Street the other day, and I noticed that somebody was building something up over a building on Dove. When I went to the Albany Institute today, and I looking south from the Institute, I find a big addition on a building somewhere on Dove with stark white aluminum or whatever it is on it, so it really glares. Somebody has built a whole section story.
would it be the building that's on the corner of Dove and Washington?
Well, my assumption is it's from the old business council building.
Right,
But-
yep.
But I had no idea it went back as far as it does.
Yeah, it's a large L-shaped structure, so it goes pretty much down, it goes from Washington down to almost Dove at Spring, and then it turns and it runs back quite a bit.
A lot there, and when we were showing concern about turning the windows into doors on Dove Street, we were told, well, we don't have jurisdiction over Dove Street, we only have jurisdiction over Washington Avenue. On the other hand, if you're talking
No,
nothing,
that whole property, that whole area, so pretty much the dividing line is Spring Street. So Spring Street going south down Dove is the Center Square Historic District. Dove Street from Spring going north out to Washington Avenue is a National Register Historic District. The National Register Historic District does not fall under the jurisdiction of the HRC, only locally designated districts. So I know that we had a discussion at one point, and it is, the HRC can put forward a recommendation to designate that area locally, and we can start that process.
well, there's another issue that we need to look at, it's called the viewscape.
Mm-hmm.
And the viewscape from the Albany Institute, looking over it's suddenly very different. If we went along with it, we would probably say on the spot, we'd say, you're gonna have a very dark, unobtrusive color up there. But that's the kind of thing we're gonna allow, because what you've got now really stands out, and it clashes with everything around it. I didn't notice it as much walking down Spring Street, but today when I looked from the Institute, it was a lot larger than I thought and gleaming white.
Is the institute locally designated as an individual?
I'll go back and I'll check to see what the designation of it is, if it is both or if it's just, I think it's just National Register, but it might be both. I can check.
Same as the other side, maybe?
Sorry?
Same thing as the other side of the street?
So the Washington Avenue Corridor Historic District is just National Register. But there are some individual landmarks that are scattered throughout that district, which is typical pretty much everywhere. But, if the individual landmarks were designated, it would just be the application to that property.
What happens to the armory and what happens to the university?
Those aren't
They have nothing.
correct.
They're on the National Register.
Correct.
So is it a
But they're not.
Is it a huge lift to take all of those things and propose that they also become local?
It's not. We discussed this earlier this year. The HRC can pretty much the HRC can just pull and designate a local district based on the National Register boundaries. we could modify and put forth our own boundaries
So
that,
that's a lift.
so, right?
So the easy part.
The easy part is that this area has already been surveyed and listed. We would go through our process, which for local designation, which it comes from the planning department to the HRC, or the HRC to the planning department, which then goes forward to the Common Council, and the Common Council then is responsible for holding the public hearing, and the notification process. So we would just, the HRC would be making the recommendation to the Common Council to put forth the designation of the historic district.
How many districts and how many individual buildings approximately would we be proposing?
Well, I mean, I would say for this discussion, it would just be the Washington Avenue corridor district for local designation and the properties within those boundaries.
What's the full list? Like, we're gonna modify. Yeah, we can't do the whole list at once, you know, like, I don't know.
So you mean all the districts?
Right.
I
No,
think
yeah.
that would be a good idea.
No.
Because it would include the Western houses and Rack Road, and just, if local commissions start just automatically designating things on the National Register,
Yeah.
the National Register designations in the city of Albany will come with switching home.
Yeah.
And that's what's happened before in countless municipalities that have done this. And Albany is so far behind its sister cities in even getting National Register designations. I mean, and then, again, I'm on my soapbox, but we really need more in our districts.
Yeah.
And everybody's fear with the National Register is that they're gonna be locally designated. And, again, we're so far behind Syracuse and Buffalo and Rochester in just getting National Register designation. I would be really worried about including all the National Register designations as local districts. That said, I think looking at Washington Avenue and considering which those I mean, that in our district, you know, we had the Lexington down on Washington Avenue for a parking lot in pretty recent memory. So that those lots could be pretty threatening. And I think looking at that as a local district makes a lot of sense. So I'm not being negative about Washington Avenue, but I'd be really careful about designating all the National Register districts, especially given Albany's hesitancy to we can't even get many Boulevard.
So is it possible back to proceeding with a group of districts, because it would be less work, right? It would be less effort, although perhaps the likely, perhaps the success might be diminished by whatever inclusions. I understand that, but is it possible still that there's a couple of districts that could proceed together through this effort that, even if not all, I didn't exactly, I'm absolutely sure that what you're saying is correct, although I don't understand it right now. So which districts would be, is it possible that not only Washington Avenue, because it just came up, but what would be the next districts that we might be thinking of? And is there a possibility then of taking that carefully, a selected group of districts forward at the same time?
I mean, a good number of our local districts are also National Register districts. So we do have the majority of our districts are already a combination, and our local districts that aren't on the National Register are certified because we are a certified local government. So those properties already qualify for tax credits.
Lestron and Rapp Road,
Knox Street, may qualify. It would definitely qualify for local designation. Rapp Road, Lestron, Washington Avenue.
Warehouse district is not national.
It is not yet.
yet?
No, not yet.
What about, well, Kara's on, we just funded, the Preservation League just funded a survey going up Washington, I think. Sure.
The survey that you guys funded is the majority of what became the Washington Avenue district. The area that did not was included in the reconnaissance level survey that we did, and that was Central Avenue. And when we
Yes.
had talked to SHPO, they really agreed with us and felt that Central Avenue really needed to be its own district. At the time, the bid was very interested in National Register listing because they really wanted to focus on the tax credits. We just couldn't do both at the same time. But there hadn't been a conversation about local listing with Central Avenue.
Okay. That's what I was thinking of.
Okay.
And do we have a Lexington now?
Lexington Avenue, but that is locally designated. Yep.
So the question again is, what's if it's not just the Washington Avenue district, as we were just speaking of, are there a handful of others that may be worthy of consideration at the same time?
But the Westron.
Lestron, Rap Road, Knox Street,
Knox Street.
Washington Avenue, Broadway, Livingston.
And your concern, Erin, could you restate it?
I'm not supportive of locally designated, really honestly more than one National Register district. Because, well, first of all, I'm not sure we can. I mean, I guess we
Agreed.
could,
I don't know that we can either.
but the whole, so National Register designation does not have the kind of local permitting regulation attached to it. And I think that it is helpful for local governments to really carefully consider whether something that's on the National Register needs that layer of permitting and protection and review that a local designation requires. Are we going to ask the residents of Rap Road or Germain Street to come to us for
Paint permits.
paint permits and window? I think that keeping those separate, and then further, I think it's challenging because you just don't have that many standalone National Register districts. And I think that we really need to have more. And I think that if people in historic neighborhoods, historically the lowercase h, have the impression that if they get listed on the National Register, the city will then want to designate them locally, and they'll have to come to us for paint permits and window replacements. And, you know, the whole argument as a preservation professional I give when I go to a city for a National Register historic district is I tell them, you can paint your house whatever color you want. You can take your windows out. You can do what you want to your house with your own money, because if you're on the National Register, and that is, in my opinion, that is one of the really effective things about that program and that kind of designation. And if you're locally designated, you can't say that. And I think it makes the work of groups like Historic Albany and the Preservation League a lot harder when they're interested perhaps in trying to get local or trying to get National Register districts. So, you know, the warehouse neighborhood that's about to go up to a public meeting, you know, already once the Washington Ave National Register district was shot down.
Right.
Because of this kind of concern.
Well, what we have is political and economic question.
It is.
That will drive everybody out of it if we get that kind of happen. On the other hand, we're in a position where we have nothing. We're just observers which aren't too public. That we have to discover something like the building on Dove Street, which most of it would recognize as historic, and watching all of the windows turned into doors, and all kinds of changes. and everybody thinks it's center square, and it's not. You know, now we're finding that there's another building going up and it's affecting, we have no role. Even a consultant, convenient, friendly advisory role. Historic Albany has that, as long as somebody tells them about it. But I suspect that a lot of the people who do that don't want Historic Albany to know until it's all done. And you wonder if we have another role that we should have.
Yeah.
And realizing how difficult it is to look like you're losing all flexibility and delaying all progress. Should we have a role that our common council and our mayor would give to us, that if you're on the register, you have to at least advise the Historic Resources Commission what you're doing, so that they can comment and have an advisory role.
Buffalo, the city of Buffalo has that in their ordinance for National Register list, and that I think would be a thing that could be discussed. But, and I totally agree in terms of the, that's the Bleecker Library, or whatever, that in terms of that building, and I'm not saying that I don't think we've designated a lot locally, like in a very long time.
In a very long time.
Should be proactive about, and I'm very supportive of it. I'm just saying, I would think, I believe that what gets designated locally and what gets designated on the National Register should not necessarily be synonymous. That's my point.
So what are you telling in your communities, what are the advantages of becoming listed in the register, the National Register?
In the National Register?
Yeah.
So many. No, I mean, really, the big advantage is access to the tax credits, and in residential communities, the homeowner tax credit.
Right.
So the fact that like in the Delaware neighborhood and in Pine Hills, I mean, people are investing all this money in their properties and they can't get the homeowner tax credits that Buffalo, I mean, all the neighborhoods in Albany, the historic neighborhoods, if you lifted them up and put them in Syracuse or Rochester or Buffalo, they're on the National Register, and those homeowners are getting 20% back for the work they're doing on their properties.
So
And Albany isn't.
So you're maybe kind of suggesting that for that percentage of buildings, particularly for the homeowner credits here, I mean, you think about the homeowner credits and the federal credits, and federal and state credits for income producing, there is a level of oversight.
Yeah.
You're going through the state and or you're going through
Right.
Department of Interior.
Right.
But it's opt-in.
Yeah.
You're opting into the oversight by applying for the tax credits.
That's right.
Right.
But I guess the point is the level of protection of the city's historic resources. Those properties, those owners are going to have some level of careful attention to their rehabilitation because they're using the credits. There's many other thousands more buildings that have no level of protection because we don't have a local designation.
Right.
So how do we weigh those two sides? I don't disagree with you at all, and it's your work on this, I don't know very about it, but how do you weigh those?
One of the things we mentioned at one point in the suggestion that we just sent last week to the council, there should be somebody in the building department who had real expertise when they talk to homeowners and property owners, what should be done correctly and done historically. Right now, there is no obligation to tell anybody in the historic community in the government that, oh, by the way, we're going to do such and such on Manning Boulevard. There's no mechanism at all, and you hope that either the neighborhood association will find out, or you've got somebody on the payroll of the building department is going to say, okay, I know what you want to do. Before you do it, we have a fella here, we have a woman here who's an expert, and I think you can improve your property if you do it properly, because you know you're on the National Register, and there may be some tax money advantages for you. But right now, there's nothing that says that somebody has, if you're on the National Register, has an obligation to say, got to talk to these people. We're going to notify the Historic Resources Commission. And if they want to give some advice on it, they can give some advice. And the advice should have a little bit of legitimacy in it. But right now, there's a void. There's nobody there in the building department with expertise. And nobody wants to do business with the neighborhood association that's sensitive, or to the historic Albany, or to us. There's a void. And by the time the void is met by being properly, then sometimes very little you can do about it.
Well, Erin, what do they have in Buffalo?
I haven't read the language specifically, but in Buffalo, if the building's on the National Register and it's demolition, it has to go before their preservation board as an advice. And I don't quote me on this, and I'm speaking publicly on it, but there's some trigger for just National Register listing, and it's not regular. I think it's not regulatory. I think it's advisory. I can look it up and send it to Erin Lennon. And so there is some precedent for that. Again, Buffalo has a strong, rich history of designating large National Register. I mean, they are so far ahead of us in getting things designated. They don't have to worry about backlash. We really have very little just National Register designated.
I'm happy to do a survey of other municipalities, either upstate cities or towns, see what they have in their ordinances.
Yeah, that would be great.
That would be helpful. Yeah.
Which ordinances will Martha be looking at? The preservation ordinances, I guess?
Yeah, preservation ordinances.
Well,
Yeah.
that's great, thank you.
I think that would probably be good, or
Buffalo would be a good place to start for this trigger. Then there's other cities that do what we're talking about. So in Elmira, we don't want to follow this, but in Elmira they do this thing where if it's on the National Register, it gets locally designated. That's not what we want to do. So when you're doing this survey, you're going to find, they run the gamut.
Mm-hmm.
So your concern is that there would be future, if all of a sudden we went and took those National Register districts and designations and made them local as well and had oversight to those, that there would be a property rights response to that would be adverse long term.
Yes.
It made it very difficult for them to be nominated, even for the National Register.
well, not even necessarily. Yeah, not even necessarily that. It then becomes that if they're locally designated, there are more regulations applied to the structure. So when people are then interested in potentially designating a property and they find out that they may have to fall under further regulations for being a historically designated property, they may now wish to be designated.
The National Register requires owner approval, and in a district it requires majority owner approval. We can locally designate something because on the council.
Right.
And I could also think of things that we might want to consider designating that are not on the National Register, but maybe are a National Register eligible district. So, in terms of, I think it's a good conversation about where we might want to put our energies as a commission and where there are perhaps National Register eligible districts that need protecting more than in that way to prevent demolition, perhaps more than the restaurants under Main Street.
If I may real quick, there is a large concern from some residents in National Register districts, particularly Rapp Road. We've had several conversations with them about local listing, and they've been all for it and very interested when inappropriate development has been happening in their neighborhood, which does very much negatively affect their community. However, when we talk about the fact that it covers the whole district and not just the properties in question, they very quickly say, no, we don't want that. And they're very vehement that they do not want local listing in any capacity because they're not interested in oversight. We used to have an abatement program that was not very widely used. And my understanding is that it's now no longer really available because it doesn't work very well. But there is no carrot, unfortunately, to being in a local district. And I think that may be something that is worth looking into a bit more. What are some carrots that can be offered, whether it's some kind of different tax abatement program could be put in place. I don't know if other cities have anything. I like the idea of more of a preservation person at codes that can certainly help you along the process, because it's definitely intimidating, and maybe that's some help, but probably not enough to push a neighborhood to really be interested in local listing. I think the other thing to consider when having this local listing conversation is that maybe we don't just want to take all of our National Register districts and look at them one by one, but Delaware Avenue actually had expressed interest now, unfortunately, quite some time ago, more about local listing, actually, even than National Register listing. At the time, the tax credit was very, very new. But there were a lot of developers moving into their neighborhood doing very inappropriate things, and they wanted the extra oversight because they wanted to stop some of these more absentee type landlords from coming in and doing these, awful porch jobs and terrible siding, while all the homeowners in between are really taking care of the properties, what the district should be used for. But it wasn't able to get off the ground then. We had worked with them on National Register listing. Long story short, didn't happen. But there is, I think, a good bit of interest still there. And I think those are the kind of communities that really might be worth looking at for local listing, the ones that could really benefit from this, where we do have a kind of some bad actors in there that the neighbors would be more interested in protecting their neighborhood. So I don't know if that's another way to look at it as well.
Lots to do.
Good food for thought.
And Martha's going to do something.
When we started talking about an advisory role, it made me think more about the conservation districts that we still don't completely understand. And somehow would that unfold in this?
Yeah, and maybe that kind of level of designation is something that would be more appropriate for these big residential districts.
Yeah, it's kind of HRC life.
Yeah.
Correct, yeah.
Aaron, on conservation districts, we've mentioned it several times, but we haven't been able to find any really good examples anywhere. Do you know of any?
Which Aaron are you?
Tobin. Sorry, Commissioner Tobin.
That's an actual question, and there's, no.
Yeah.
No, I don't know why. It's very frustrating, but,
We've,
Can you go back to the consultants that worked with us on the historic preservation plan? Because they were the ones that kind of offered that as another mechanism, another avenue of oversight. And I mean, they work on a much more national basis. Maybe they have examples in other states of how this has been instituted.
Yeah.
And we can take a look at it and see what those experiences have been.
Yeah, I can definitely reach out to him. We did.
Not limit ourselves to New York City.
Yeah, we as we've been going through and doing the review of the USDO, the Unified Sustainable Development Ordinance, the zoning code, and looking at, we have discussed going in and putting a section in for the conservation districts to get it started so that it's at least there's a reference to it within the code under this review process. And that was one of the things that I had started to do, kind of a deep dive of, what conservation districts are out there nationally. And it is a little bit difficult to find good examples of them. San Antonio has a conservation district system. When I was looking into it, it was a little confusing. And I know that it looks like some communities had adopted them and then dissolved them. So I would be interested in finding out, why exactly they're no longer being used. Was it just that it was difficult, or that, they found that it, just didn't work, I guess, within their community. So I know that Lakota had discussed, I think there's one within Racine, Wisconsin. So that they had kind of touted as being a good example. So I will reach out to them and find out if they have any examples.
The one I always used was this old traditional neighborhood overlay that parts of that were incorporated into
Yes.
zoning code, but it was very specific, which was really helpful in saying things like, no closed porches, all the things you would want, more like a formative with than that. Sometimes.
Right. Yeah, we still do have them. They are the streetscape design standards, and they're applied throughout the city for all properties outside of historic districts. But yeah, previously the traditional neighborhood overlay had specific boundaries as well. So both for residential neighborhoods and then commercial districts.
Yeah, when I applied for a permit to put the addition in the back of my house, I discovered I was in a neighborhood.
The overlay.
So what happened?
They just wanted more specific information about what it would appear like from the street. I made a model of it, so I took photographs of the model, from various street views. What happened, couldn't see anything, really.
And who's the they?
The planning department. No, the planning department. We,
Yeah.
most of them come through our department and come across my desk.
This was back in 2003. And it was all done, with the building department.
Yeah, they generally,
They were across the street.
it generally comes in as part of, when someone submits a building permit, it then is either they are able to do it within the building department is able to do it within the office, or it's forwarded to the planning department for review to make sure that it's compliant with the code. Most of what the design standards speak to are retention of historic materials or replicating those materials. So maintaining windows and the fenestration patterns and doors, siding, if siding is being replaced, making sure that trim is respected and retained, not enclosing porches, retaining kind of historic exterior elements to the building. And it is, as John stated, it's what's visible from a public right of way.
I entertain a motion to adjourn. People are ready. Second, all those in favor? Turn off your microphones. Thank you all.